Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel and the podcast. I've got with me,
Hi guys, Ash here.
and we have just come out of the Carlos Alcaraz press conference. Of course, Carlitos is the 2024 Wimbledon champion, beating Novak Djokovic in straight sets 6-2, 6-2, 7-6 in probably not as entertaining final as a lot of people thought, but he was clinical to say the least. And we're going to get into the detail of the match and also the press conferences. We managed to get a question to Novak Djokovic. First question, so keep out an eye out for that. Obviously, after the mediators question. For Carlos, it just wasn't to be. I think there are a lot of people in there, and look, it was our first Wimbledon, so we can't complain that we got 3 out of the 4 finalists in terms of questions. So, yeah, happy with that. But in terms of achievements, a ridiculously good performance from Alcaraz, and it means that he's now won the Channel Slam, so which is Roland Garros and Wimbledon back to back. He's the first Spaniard to do it since Rafael Nadal, who did it in 2008 and 2010. He's also the first Spanish player to win Wimbledon twice in 2 years, so to defend his title. And he's the youngest, I think, player to win, what was it, like 4 Grand Slams, you were saying in the
Mm.
presser? So at the age of 21, before 22 even. There's a lot of stats flying around here and there, achievements. He's breaking records, and I think he's also won his first. Well, he has won his first 4 Grand Slam finals, and the only other player to do that in the Open era was Roger Federer. So I mean, that's just an incredible stat as well, and he's still unbeaten in Grand Slam finals, which. I'm sure it will change at some point, but at the moment he's looking phenomenal when it gets to the crunch time in slams. Ash, I mean, we were watching it, and today, unfortunately, not to be courtside, we managed to both watch courtside the women's final. Today wasn't quite to be. The Spanish commentators, I think, taking up some room, and we had to make do with watching in the media center with some of the other staff as well. What did you think of the match generally? Were you surprised? And yeah, I mean, great win, of course, for Alcaraz.
Yeah, I mean, really did enjoy it. I think that first game set the tone for things. Super entertaining, kind of swinging both ways. And I think Alcaraz won it and just never looked back. And it was, yeah, really enjoyed it from simply the perspective of watching Alcaraz perform so well. He just delivered on all fronts, served brilliantly. Um, the ball was flying off his racket from both wings and chasing down anything and everything. Just a highlight reel of a match in itself from Alcaraz. So it was, yeah, super enjoyable. I think since he's won, obviously we've heard a lot of kind of numbers and stats been thrown around. Um, Kind of a sense that this could be a changing of the guard. But I think just from the perspective of admiring what a great performer Alcaraz has become in a pretty short space of time, and excited to see kind of, they were already comparing. There was a question in the press conference that, how many do you want to win? And he said it himself. He was like, it could be 25, 34. So,
Yeah,
he could stop now.
yeah,
And that kind of just speaks to the kind of person he is: super humble, down to earth, super likable.
yeah.
So yeah, definitely a worthy champion.
Yeah, 100%. And he gives a lot of time, I think, for people, and he seems to be one of those players and personalities that I haven't really heard many people talk ill of him. And here as well at Wimbledon, all the staff seem to, I said in the preview, they seem to love him, and that's not to say that makes him a better player than anyone, right? It just, I think, in terms of personality wise, he people warmed to him for whatever
Mm.
reason. Novak actually had a lot of the crowd on his side today, and that was interesting to see as well. They clearly wanted. I think there's obviously going to be a lot of support for him anyway. He's a 7-time champion at Wimbledon. Let's not forget that he was looking to equal Roger Federer's record of 8 Wimbledons, and not only that, but the crowd clearly obviously wanted to see more tennis. Like as simple as that. But if we break it down, as you mentioned, that first game, it was 14 minutes long. I think it was around 7, 8 juices, and it was just a long, arduous game where both players weren't quite playing their best. They were obviously a little bit tight early on, weren't giving up a couple of really good points. Novak was coming forward, and we watched him you know, it's worth mentioning because we haven't mentioned it to you guys, but myself and Ash, we didn't quite catch Carlos's practice, but we saw Djokovic, and he was practicing with two British guys, and they were, obviously hitting with him. So he had two hitting partners at the same time, and at the start, it was just very much like, yes, go through the motions. And then he started to do very specific things. And one of the things was finishing off points with a drop shot. And then after that, it was coming to the net a lot. So he would hit one or two shots and then come to the net and try and finish the points off of the net. And he looked phenomenal. He was hitting beautiful drop volleys. He was hitting deep volleys into corners. He looked amazing. We're like, whoa, okay, he looks great. And we're also thinking, well, okay, he's probably going to utilize that against Alcaraz. Is that the best tactic to use? We were probably thinking maybe not. But look, I mean, he's won 24 slams and he looked good on the practice court. So you say, well, let's see how it goes. Then, of course, they played some points as well. And again, he was serving and he was either hitting a big +1 shot and then coming to the net or 7 volleying. So that was a clear tactic that he was going to try and employ, which was interesting because, I think Alcaraz is arguably at the moment, I mean, you could say maybe Sinner, but I think maybe Alcaraz is the best player when it comes to picking people off of the net because he's got incredible athleticism. He's able to pass you with backhand or forehand, cross court down the line with ease. He's got the lob as well. And he's just able to, he's got this dexterity where if he's on the stretch, at full stretch, like a Djokovic, he's able to still get that loose wrist and be able to just conjure something incredible. And we saw that throughout the match in some of the moments. So, look, he is a supreme athlete. He's at 21 years of age. Clearly, a lot more spry at the moment than Djokovic. He's at 37. And, maybe we saw a little bit of that. And is it the changing of the guard we said last year when Alcaraz won and it was 5 sets and then Djokovic went on to the US Open? Now, Djokovic hasn't won a slam this year. The US Open's coming up, and I hate to say it, but a very early thought is I don't think he will win it. And if he goes a season slamless, that's when I think you can say it. Because Nadal, I don't think is going to win another slam, despite, the comebacks and stuff. Federer's gone. So that's when you can say the changing of the guard. And I think it's well and truly now underway. And I think it's probably fair to say that. A note on Djokovic, actually, and I haven't really talked about the kind of tactically and statistically, and I guess we could talk about that in a second, Ash, is Djokovic, of course, and he mentioned it in the press conference. Yes, he was bitterly disappointed, but one thing that he did say is that if you look at it, and he gave himself perspective on the situation and said, look, yes, it was disappointing, but at the same time, I did have knee surgery, 30 days ago, 40 days ago. And I'm very happy to have at least made the final. He made it very clear that maybe his preparation wasn't the best because of the knee, but he prepared the best way he could. And not only that, he did say that, look, and he didn't really make an excuse. He just said, my level wasn't good enough today. Like Carlos was just, he said to me when I asked him a question, one of the words he used was inferior. He said, I was inferior to Carlos in every way. That's what he said. And that's, I wouldn't say it's alarming, but it's, it's quite a big word to use, right? But he was very reflective, I think, in the press conference and just said his level of tennis at the moment is not good enough to compete with Yannick and Carlos. And that is very, very, very good. What I would say is it'll be interesting to see what Novak does going forward in the Olympics and other tournaments, because clearly this is now a moment in his career, which he mentioned in the presser, that he's going to have to try and make changes. But at 37 years of age, it's going to be difficult to make these wholesale changes. So let's see what he comes up with. And obviously, we'll talk about net play. He only won what? he only won 51% of those points, and not only that, but he ended up only winning 27 out of 53. So he came to that 53 times over 3 sets, which is a lot. Only won 27 of those points. And in the first set, I think it was down at like 20-30%. So it kind of progressively got better. but it just wasn't working because he wasn't volleying as well as he was in that the practice, because the ball was coming at 20, no, 15, 20, 10 mile per hour quicker than it was in the practice. Carlos, hits it with a lot more shape and topspin, and just generally makes it a lot more difficult as well, for players, of course, than the guys he was practicing with. And also, I think Novak was worried that Carlos would get to the volleys. Then at times he was overplaying it and missing. So that was interesting. But yeah, what were your thoughts, I guess, tactically on the match and how it played out, Ash, as well?
I think, yeah, we saw it in the practice. It seemed like he was going to be going with the serve and volley, um, and ultimately it really didn't work out for him in that front. I think he was quite tentative with the volleys, or not really kind of sticking the ball in the area, not really willing to take the risk in a way. So he gave Alcaraz the chance to chase down balls and get there. And we said how good his passing. We said it yesterday. His passing shots are so good, and his athleticism, his ability to divert the ball and change the angle is incredible. So I think Djokovic was clearly aware of that, and in a way that perhaps impacted him in terms of his mindset when going for those volleys. I don't think it was necessarily a technical thing. It was purely just the mind games aspect of things.
An execution, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think I got the sense from that press conference that Djokovic is pretty satisfied with making the final here, and ultimately, you said in a way it's easier because his opponent just played brilliantly, and he's like, fair play, came up against the better man today, which in a way perhaps makes it an easier pill to swallow. And then I think he's also thinking holistically, thinking long term. He mentioned the Olympics and how big it would be to win that, for his country. He said, and he's thinking about the U.S. Open as well, which would be super interesting, because the U.S. Open kind of, I feel like it's a tournament where the field suddenly opens up, and
especially after the Olympics, it's probably all right. You don't know if people pick up injuries.
Exactly, yeah, it's quite hard almost to think about that with the Olympics coming up.
I mean, how tired will people be, right? That's the thing.
Exactly. It would have been a pretty grueling summer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Djokovic kind of had quite a bigger picture mindset, which was good to see for him in terms of how he feels that obviously he's at this age now, and he's seeing players around him, most recently Murray departing. So I'm sure there's probably something in the back of his head saying, how long do I have left?
Yeah.
But he seems to have a quite a positive attitude about things, which is good to see.
Yeah, no, agreed. And it's interesting you say about Djokovic maybe just being in his head a little bit. And I do wonder how much of last year's final played on his mind, in the sense that, that was one of the best years of his career in 2023, right? He won 3 out of the 4 slams, made a final of Wimbledon as well, lost in 5. Carlos is, I would say, he's probably a better player than he was last year.
Yeah.
And Novak, I don't think he is a better player. And I don't think he's actually as good as he was last year either. And the results and the stats from this year would back that up. And obviously, he also came back from that meniscus surgery. So overall, I'm sure, like, for someone who, and it's weird to say this about Novak because he's generally a mental giant. I think he's probably, you could argue he's got, he's had the best mentality of any sportsman even.
Yeah.
But surely, even for him, he must have been thinking, I'm not playing at my best. I'm physically not at my best. Carlos is playing better, and last year I lost to him. So what do I do? And I think the culmination of those thoughts is what led him to say, I don't want to get dragged into long rallies, which is what I did say yesterday that he should do. So I'm going to come to the net a lot. But what I think he maybe didn't do as well, I think from the back of the court, and the stats back this up, and you mentioned this, was behind his serve, really attack the +1 shot.
Yeah.
And not just attack it, but attack it effectively. Because I think at times he did, but it just wasn't clicking. And he mentioned that he just wasn't playing a good enough level of tennis. And he hit 71% of first serves in compared to 59% for Alcaraz. But then if you break down the first serve and second serve points won, second serve points won, Alcaraz was in front. But if we focus on first serve points, 84% of first serve points won for Alcaraz, 66% for Djokovic, and that's a massive disparity of 18%, right? Which is big when we talk about it. So yeah, I mean, he was trying to attack. I mean, they've got this metric here from now these data analytics from, I think it's IBM and whoever else and Emphasis, and in attack, so the player that's trying to play on the front foot, Djokovic was at 32% and Alcaraz at 23%. But what was happening is that at times Djokovic was almost not aimlessly, but he was coming to the net in moments where he probably shouldn't have been. Either the approach wasn't good enough. We were saying he was going to the forehand way too much on the approach shots. So either the depth wasn't there on the approach shots, or he was being predictable. It wasn't the right time to come forward generally anyway from whatever shot he was getting. And he was getting picked off, right? Pretty comfortably. And the stats back that up. And, that would have definitely, I'm sure, just, it would have, it's weird because you would have thought after a while he would have thought, I'm not going to come to the net as much. But it's almost like he didn't have the belief that I can get into these long rolling rallies with Alcaraz and win them, because, I couldn't do it last year and I was playing my best. I was playing my best at that time. So why would I be able to do it now? So he almost didn't really try and change tactic. It was like, I just need to go gung ho and hope I can hit him off the court and rush him and make him feel uncomfortable coming to the net, finish off points quickly. Otherwise, I've got no chance. So yeah, I mean, it was an interesting one for sure. And like the winners' time force errors, we can touch upon that. I mean, it wasn't a terrible match from Djokovic. 26 winners, 25 unforced errors. So more winners than unforced errors just. And if Alcaraz 42 winners to 24 unforced errors. So I mean, almost double the amount of winners, which is very impressive from him. And he was definitely, I think, clutch generally. What were your thoughts on the four? That would have been 3 championship points at the end for Alcaraz. Obviously serving for it at 5-4, and then he had a little bit of a wobble.
Yeah, I mean, it shows he's human.
Yeah,
it was pretty excruciating watching at times, because it seemed like the nerves really got to him, which is understandable. Not something we've really seen before, but serving out for the Wimbledon title must be one of the most daunting things you can do. But he, even though he did seem a bit shaken and obviously got broken, I did think he recovered really well and just played, kind of went back to his strengths and in that tiebreak. And I did think even though Djokovic broke him back, it seemed there was only going to be one winner in that tiebreak. Alcaraz just seemed to be the one, who was being the most assertive in the rallies, and just impressive that he could kind of mentally recover from that situation, because when you got, it's bad enough having one championship point, but having being 40 love up, you're thinking, right, like this is done. But to then get the break, and especially when the man on the other side, as you said, is in terms of mentality right up there in sports, it must be even harder, because you're like, oh no, I've given him a boost, and that's the worst thing you could possibly do. So really impressive that he could recover in that tiebreak and get the win in straight sets, because it could have gone downhill from there.
Yeah, it could have got messy, couldn't it? And the thing is that was a weird game from Alcaraz. 40 love up, looked really comfortable, and then all of a sudden double fault, and then there was a missed forehand, which he kind of took out the air. And we were saying he loves going down the line, he loves the harder shot, right? And there's been questions to him in this Wimbledon, like, what's the balance between playing the shot that's going to please the crowd more and the one that's going to be most effective? And really what that's saying is, when do you feel like you have to play the higher percentage shot compared to the shot that is going to be more entertaining but it's hard to execute? What's the balance there, right? And I think there was a drive volley that he took out of the air on the forehand. Probably should have gone cross court. Maybe he was thinking, okay, if I go cross court, Djokovic might get there. He might pass me down the line if I come to the net. I think he's quick enough to transition and get across. We were both saying, but he went down the line, he missed it, tried to go behind Novak. Obviously, if he makes it, wins it, we don't say anything. So easy in hindsight to say it, but missed that. Then he missed another forehand trying to go cross court, went too big, whipped it long. And there was also a really good return from Novak off a second serve, which was right at the feet of Carlos. Nothing he could really do about it. And then they kind of battled at Juice, and Novak broke him. And it was one of those moments where you thought, oh, hold on, now 5-5. He's opened the door for Novak. Like, what's going to happen here? Novak had a pretty comfortable service game. Alcaraz managed to take it to Juice. To the tiebreaker pretty comfortably. You're thinking, right, okay, who's going to edge it here? And the first few points were pretty nervy. Like, both players kind of managed to do okay, breaks of serve or mini breaks, and 7-4 in the end. And Alcaraz, I think he reset pretty well, as you said, after those missed opportunities. He did well in his service game, and that was, I think, a positive sign. Like, okay, fine, those chances have gone, but I'll still have another chance. He was still 2 sets to love up, and I think he fancied, even if it went to a tiebreaker, he was going to take it. So he's shown a real level of maturity, which is what he said in the press conference as well, that maybe he didn't have last year. Someone asked him in the press conference, you mentioned after the Medvedev loss at the US Open that you need to mature more. And he said, yeah, I did. I need to grow up a bit more, just be a bit more mature. And I think that probably feeds into the playing the not safer, but the higher percentage shots at times, and realize that you need to sometimes go into lockdown mode like a Novak. And that's, I think, what he did in that tiebreaker. He wasn't too, flashy. That when he played a really good drop shot. I think the point before the match point, and it was just very, very well disguised. It was the right time to play it. It wasn't from a weird angle or 2 meters behind the baseline. So I think he's become better with his shot selection, and the fact that we're still talking about him and saying that he has areas to improve is a scary thought, because we don't know his ceiling. I don't know where his ceiling is, to be honest. So. And that's maybe why someone like Novak was reflective, because Sinner and Alcaraz are only going to get better. So where does that leave him? I think is probably what he's thinking. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the year pans out. But he's going to be a big favourite for for the Olympics, no doubt. The confidence he has, he'll just want to try and recover quickly. But yeah, I mean he's the winner here, and we hope you guys enjoyed the content from Wimbledon. Obviously lots of player interviews, press conference questions that we've uploaded on as well, on top of some of these podcasts. And also some of the live chats that you guys have had with David and Anthony. So hope you guys have enjoyed it. It's been an amazing experience, but definitely, I would say it's been hard work, but in a good way. And there's definitely a lot of effort being put in behind the scenes to get you guys this content. But thank you for you guys for supporting us. The reason that we're able to be here is because you guys supported us. And I could say, this is our following, this is our platform, and they've said, cool, that's good enough. You guys can come here as media. So we appreciate that. Ash, before we sign off, could you give a best presser that you've been in? And or questions. So like best presser, or it can be player that maybe you've interviewed, and also a best moment of the tournament.
That's a tough one. I haven't thought about this yet.
Put you on the spot.
To be honest, I think any of the pressers with Alcaraz I've enjoyed, because he just seems like a nice bloke, a similar age to me as well. So I feel like in an alternate universe we might be mates.
Ash wishes having a hit with him.
But I just like his answers, and he seems super honest. Happy to be here, which I just think is really refreshing. He seems to have a lot of time for everybody. Whether it's people working in the media, ball kids, any member of staff, anyone. He also just seems to have a really nice family around him as well. We saw his brothers, his parents. It's just a lot to like about him and his family. So yeah, kind of any one of the pressers with Alcaraz probably, even though we didn't get to answer a question in this last one, it was still nice to see him celebrate his win. And In terms of best moment, I think um, I think being able to watch the women's final was incredible. You had a really good view of that,
Yeah,
and it was a fantastic final. I think as time goes on, people will really look back on that final fondly. And then also I think from a British perspective, seeing Murray bow, I didn't really go out in style, but I think the tributes were really nice to him, and seeing kind of
yeah,
the respect from other players, and kind of the appreciation that the tennis world has for him, which was, I mean, super deserved because he's been such a great ambassador for the sport and for this country. So the Murray send off, I think, as well was right up there.
yeah. No, I agree. The Murray send off was great, and good to see him get his rightful send off. I think for me, in terms of a best interview or question or presser, I think probably the Novak Runa one. So obviously I
Mm.
was in that, and I asked him the first question. I knew he was going to get questions about the booze, but I'm not going to lie to you guys. I mean, I'd asked questions to other players, and I hadn't asked one to Novak. And with Alcaraz, I wouldn't have been worried either. But with Novak, just because 24 slams, and he just has this air of like
Yeah.
just confidence and greatness, right? And there's something different about him. I think I would have felt the same if I was asking a question to Nadal. Uh, maybe Federer as well, but I feel like maybe Nadal and Djokovic, just they've got that it's a different type of, I think, air about them. And when I'm not joking, when he came and sat down, and then the mediator asked me first, I first of all wasn't expecting that, and then
Mm.
after that, my heart was like thumping. I could feel my heart thumping. I knew I was nervous, and I managed to ask the question okay, and I didn't ask on the booing, so that was good, and he gave me a pretty good answer. But yeah, I mean, it was that was a surreal moment. I think. Also, being able to get a picture with Alcaraz was fantastic. Got a little selfie with him on the practice courts, Orangi they call it here at Wimbledon. But yeah, keep that one quiet, guys. and but the other, in terms of what, so I said my best presser and best moment. So best moment probably actually has to be, and it's weird because I'm going back to Novak, but the I was in the stadium when he gave the on on match interview, or after match interview even, on court, and it's when he said have a good night that just cracked me up. So, and I couldn't actually get out of my head for at least 24 hours, and it was just playing through my head, and it was cracking me up every time. So obviously a bit of a divisive moment, but a good one nonetheless. I just thought it was very funny. And then one thing I wanted to say actually before we wrap up is the Raducanu presser. So when she lost, so I asked her a question, and she gave a good answer. But the majority of the questions in her presser were about her pulling out with Andy Murray.
Oh yeah.
And I just want to say, and I don't know if you guys have watched that, but I was sitting there almost at some point shaking my head because I just couldn't believe the same question kept on coming over and over and over again, just worded slightly differently to try and get a different answer and push her and just prod her and get her to react. And she was very good. She gave the same answer over and over again, saying it was the right choice for her. She would do it again. And, fair play to her, because at the end of the day, for people who are Murray fans or anyone else, you'll know that singles players prioritize singles. Like, as simple as
Yeah.
that. So if they feel they have a slight niggle or an injury, they still might play in the singles, but they might pull out of doubles. It's a pretty normal thing. Like, it really is, especially as you get deeper into tournaments. So that, I don't think, was a weird
If
thing.
anyone would get that, it's
Murray,
Murray. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, and she said he was disappointed, but I'm sure he would have been fine generally after. And it would have been a bit awkward if they didn't do his send off in the doubles, men's doubles, because then, like, say they didn't do it, they lost, they didn't do it, then he wouldn't have had another chance to
He'd
do
have to
it.
come back
But
next
yeah,
year.
or he would come back. I don't know. Like, maybe they just get him to come on a one
Yeah.
off and do it, but it would have been a bit strange. So luckily that didn't happen. But yeah, that was weird, and it just unfortunately reinforced the, I think, the belief that a lot of the media very much, they really like to prod Raducanu.
Mm,
And
mm.
I think Murray probably had it to a degree as well, but the British press can be a little bit brutal, I think, at times. And one of the other actually sorry, I'm hogging it, but the last moment for me is actually there's some Italian journalists who are generally very nice guys, and one guy from Eurosport Italia asked Runa, said, when he lost, after he lost to Djokovic, again I managed to ask Runa a question, he answered it really well, but he asked Runa and said, look, you know, you lost the first 14 points of the match. He's like, oh, he's basically saying, is that criminal because you basically gave them momentum and then you lost the match from there. And Runa was like, he's like, it's very brutal to say that. Like he was like clearly very not happy with the question. He's like, it's very brutal to say that. Like I threw away the match.
Mm.
And he said, and he gave a very good answer. He said, look, I only lost the first set 6-3. I lost the first set 6-3 to Novak last year in the Paris Masters. I went on to win, so it's not a big deal. But it's just the way that he said that's a very brutal question. Like he let the journalist know like he wasn't happy with it. But yeah, that was a really good one as well. It's just a funny moment where I said that thing, oh, this could go sideways. But there are some fantastic moments, and I think what we'll try and do is potentially do a live chat this week coming, probably on an evening UK time, where we get a few of us on who've been to Wimbledon as media, and we can share our experiences. You guys can ask us questions about the players, and obviously we know the players as well as we can from seeing press conferences, etc., and obviously interacting with them in person. But some of us have interviewed them one-to-one as well. But obviously it doesn't mean that we know exactly what they're like, but we have a better understanding, obviously, than we did before, which is great. So, anyways, any last remarks, Ash, before we wrap it up?
No, just I think thank you guys. I mean, I wouldn't be able. I mean, I'm like one of you guys, right? I'm a fan, so to be able to kind of get this behind the scenes insight into Wimbledon, yeah, I owe it all to you guys and to Fazan for some reason getting me involved with this channel and bringing me down to Wimbledon, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, thanks to you and Fazan for giving me that opportunity.
No problem. No, thank you to you, and also shout out to everyone who did work during the last 3 weeks in qualifying, and also the 2 weeks of the championship. So Flo, Ash H, also we had Venu, Liam, and I don't think I missed anyone. Hopefully I haven't. I think that's everyone. So yeah, everyone did a fantastic job. We got some really good content for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. In the live Q&A as well, or like live chat, you can obviously let us know what you think we could do better. We are covering Atlanta. Anthony, our US correspondent, because they're now formal, will be going to Atlanta. So yeah, we've got more content incoming. So from tournaments, and we'll also be able to do play-by-play commentary again. So that's all positive. So after post Wimbledon, so from tomorrow onwards, Monday onwards, we'll be able to do it. So we hope you guys enjoy that coming back as well. Cool. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe and well. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new. Do leave drop a follow if you're listening on podcast platforms, and also drop a comment and let me know what you think of not just the men's final but Wimbledon as a whole. Any of your thoughts will be greatly appreciated. Thank you, guys, and enjoy.